What is going on, everybody? John Impemba here with Eric Romoff. It is NFL Week 2 Thursday night football preview here. We have the Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins to kick off Thursday night football. Certainly appreciate all of you that are going to be tuning in here today with us tonight. We're going to answer your start-sit questions. We're going to talk about some of our favorite DFS plays, some of our favorite bets on the night. If you're playing over on Underdog, Prize Picks, or Sleeper, I got articles out over on Fantasy Alarm for all of you to go check out there. So we'll talk about some of those favorite plays. But more importantly, we are here to get you guys ready for the start of Week 2. Eric, man, how are we doing?
Man, we're doing good. My head is still spinning from a wild and weird Week 1. A lot of head scratchers in terms of guys that we were expecting to show out pretty consistently. Kind of came up a little flat. But also several guys that immediately burst as some nice mid-round value overall. So trying to make sense of what's signal, what's noise, and ultimately out here trying to project that forward into week number 2.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, some of the bigger storylines from week 1 was the surprise inactive of Christian McCaffrey, stunning everybody on the Monday night football game. So not even really any time to react and make moves really to swap out CMC. I was actually fortunate in my hometown matchup to be facing Christian McCaffrey on that night, and I was able to get a win there in that one, having the my opponent eat a 0. And then in another league where they pay out the weekly high score, I was in the lead, but someone had Christian McCaffrey was right behind me. Obviously, they ate the 0, and I was able to hold on to the weekly high score there. So benefited both ways from having Christian McCaffrey be unexpectedly ruled out. And now we're sort of getting the tail here again. McCaffrey limited participant in practice in each of the last 2 days. We all thought he wasn't going to play, and then there's some reports that he could be on IR, and then he's supposedly telling that he's going to be ready to go. He's dealing with Achilles tendonitis. And obviously the 49ers are a team that really do not release any information, truthful or otherwise. So, what's your take and what would be your approach to week 2 when it comes to Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, I mean, with the reputation of the 49ers, it's kind of hard to say anything other than wait and see, right? They're pretty airtight in terms of the information or lack thereof that they get out to the world. Some of that reporting in terms of CMC sort of intimating that he's going to be ready to go. I think that was actually part of a larger quote where he was saying that he's preparing like he'll be ready to go, right? He kind of heads into each week with the mentality that he's the starter and he has to be ready if his number is called. I think the medical staff / coaching staff might have a different thing to say about that, being that there was some rumblings that IR was at least part of the conversation, right? I would be surprised if we see him out there this week, but I mean, getting into week 3, week 4, non-zero chance that he takes the field in my mind.
Did you have any shares of Jordan Mason?
I have several shares of Jordan Mason of the dichotomy that you laid out, either getting the 0 with CMC or dodging CMC on Monday night. I was definitely in the latter camp, right? I had a few teams that I thought I was going to get surpassed by a wide margin and hung on for dear life as CMC posted the 0. And yeah, have a lot of Jordan Mason. I think a lot of that has to do with my overarching strategy. I was a bit of a 0 RB drafter this offseason. So that left me speculating with these high implied value guys like Jordan Mason.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially, once you got the news that Mitchell was out for the year, all the hype around Mason was there. I was able to snag him as well in a few drafts, and especially best ball late. I tried to wait as long as possible to draft my best ball teams to kind of get as much of a picture as I can with these rosters. So I was able to grab a healthy share of Mason there late. What are some of your other key takeaways from week 1? Any surprising performances? Anybody come out as you thought they would? Anybody let you down?
Yeah, so the thing that I've really been keying in on over the course of this week and really a tradition for me after week 1 is trying to identify some higher name or higher value guys that came up a little bit short and see if we can't go by the dip, so to speak, right? So looking at guys like Drake London, like Chris Olave, 2 players that had absolutely brutal matchups to start the year. London facing off against Joey Porter Jr., Chris Olave not only in the wild blowout, but also facing off against J.C. Horn. These are guys that I think have much brighter days ahead of them, but guys that, fantasy managers spent early, middle, second round pick on might be a little bit salty about, and I'm trying to go out and get them on the cheap. And then also, I am out here absolutely taking advantage of the panic around Marvin Harrison Jr.
Sure.
Certainly looked slow, certainly looked like he was having difficulty separating, especially against press coverage. But there were also several plays, a dozen or so by my charting, where he had 2.5, 3 more yards of separation. And I think if he continues to do that as he gets more and more acclimated to the NFL speed and to this Cardinals offense, we're going to see some pretty big games out of him before too long, right?
Sure.
Someone that I think you can definitely take advantage of. But yeah, the theme here is go buy the dip, right? If anyone is disgruntled, if anyone feels like they stepped in it by drafting player X in week 1, go take advantage and see if you can't get them on the cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I think. What are your thoughts on the Falcons situation? Obviously, Kirk Cousins didn't look great there in week 1. Ooh. Is that sort of maybe he's shaking off some of the rust of real play? Anything maybe the Steelers could have done to him, or are there real red flags now raised on what we should expect out of this Falcons offense?
Yeah, bit of both for me. If I had to split it, I would say probably about 60-40 in favor of rust and circumstance, and then 40 side would be a bit more concerned. Sure. Look, he's first came back from an Achilles. Didn't get any reps over the course of the preseason. He's in a brand new offense, right? So there are things that that you can string together and have a pretty defendable learning curve. But there were also times where it seemed like he was physically limited, like to the point where he couldn't really hand off the ball, right? So definitely some things to be worried about watching that game back, but not so much to where I think we just need to abandon ship on the Falcons offense quite yet.
As a Patriots fan, I had very low expectations going into Sunday in their matchup against the Bengals, what they are able to pull off. An upset win there. I guess the question now is, what do we expect out of Cincinnati? Joe Burrow is seen sort of flexing his wrist quite a few times there, and people are wondering if he is fully healthy. Obviously, T. Higgins still not practicing, and then we don't know exactly how in shape Jamar Chase is in. Is this a situation now where maybe things are quickly turning south for Cincinnati?
I'm less concerned about Cincinnati, right? There are a lot more things that that add up to make sense in my mind in terms of how they ended up there. One, Joe Burrow and this version of the Bengals are notoriously slow starters. They tend to get off to kind of stumble out of the gates year in and year out. Then you mentioned T. Higgins not being there. You mentioned Jamar Chase being potentially out of shape, or at least fighting back from some sort of illness. There are things that that should be able to smooth out as soon as this week, right? Also, shout out to your Patriots, right? Like nobody was really expecting them to put forward this kind of game, right? They came in and they immediately popped this Bengals team in the mouth. Turnovers are largely what buoyed this win, and those things are very, very hard to project forward. So kind of fringy or outliery in nature. Like I said, far less concerned about Cincinnati because we've kind of seen them recover from this type of open before.
Yeah, 100% in agreement with you there. Obviously, the biggest blow, I think, injury rise from week 1 was the Jordan Love injury. Obviously, CMC withstanding, but Jordan Love, a lot of people were high on this Green Bay Packers offense, especially the wide receivers there. And all of a sudden we have, now the injury to Jordan Love. What are your thoughts with him moving forward? And the offense, obviously, dealing with Malik Willis now as the quarterback in Green Bay.
Yeah, well, a prime example of how Twitter doctors can kind of steer you down the wrong path. There were a lot of people saying that they saw a pop in that ligament and thought it might be a season ender. Now, at least the immediate reporting after that game was that it was more of a strain. And actually, as of the last couple of days, there's reporting that he might be able to make his way back into game action potentially this week or the following, right? So, hard to get a great read on the circumstance. If I had to guess, we're probably looking at Malik Willis this week, and then we'll get a clearer picture heading into next week. And if that's the case, looking at Malik Willis in week 2, I mean, talk about a head scratcher. We were already sort of grasping at straws, trying to figure out the pecking order amongst this very deep wide receiver core. Now you bring in Malik Willis, who is relatively new to this offense, right? He was traded very deep into the preseason and hasn't exactly been the shining example of accuracy and adaptation to the NFL level. So obviously a big downgrade for this passing offense overall with presumably Willis under the helm this week.
I remember going into that draft, many people thought like Willis or Ritter were going to be like first round picks. Then they fall all the way out to day 2, and it was obviously very clear why. Neither of them, Ritter neither of them are starting caliber quarterbacks, and what we've seen out of Malik Willis in limited time has not looked good at all. So they got that home matchup this week against the Colts here, and we'll see kind of what turns over from that. We appreciate you guys all in the chat. Obviously, members of FA Nation, Coop's in there saying what's up. Chris Diaz talking about his 100K FanDuel Showdown lineup. Chris offered us a piece of that last week if we're able to come through with it. We had we didn't expect the likely game, right? That was the last time you and I were on here. We were previewing the opening night slate, Kansas City, Baltimore. Likely goes and pops, and now my mentions, my DMs, my TikTok messages are all about: do I start Isaiah Likely or insert high end tight end? Where are you with Isaiah Likely here?
Yeah, I think it's really two sides of the same coin, right? Mathematically, I believe we've probably seen Isaiah Likely's best game of the season already, right? So we can kind of project a plateau or a bit of a decrease from his outstanding week 1 performance, but that doesn't mean that the bottom completely falls out either, right? I think we're looking at a reality where, much like we did in week number 1, we see the Ravens run a lot more 12 personnel this year, and in turn, Likely he's going to be on the fantasy radar week in and week out, right? Right now I have him ranked as tight end number 9. So definitely a guy that you can make a strong case for starting every single week. I'm actually getting a lot of, would you start Likely over Mark Andrews? I'm not quite at that point yet, but I understand why there's that consideration. I think another week removed from that car accident, another week into the practice and into the system for Mark Andrews, and we'll see him bounce back pretty nicely this week. But honestly, I think both players are going to be on the radar for the duration.
Yeah, the top tier tight end group was such a disappointment in week 1 that there were a lot of people certainly panicking. I kid you not, I have a lot of Likely or Kelsey messages that were sent in to me. I'm like, no, you're still playing Kelsey. But if this week ends up looking like last week, then maybe that conversation ends up changing with the way Baltimore is running their offense here. But so Chris in there with his showdown lineup tonight. He's got Allen as his MVP. His flex is Shakir, Kincaid. He's got Jeff Wilson Jr. and Tyreek Hill in there on the FanDuel 100K. I mean, you want to get the top quarterback like Josh Allen as your MVP and you're fitting in. You're not punting any of those plays, right? Like on DraftKings when you play the showdown, usually if you're going to be spending up on those kind of guys, you got to, maybe you're playing a kicker or you're playing, a fourth wide receiver. You got a whole solid group of guys there, Chris. So I'm liking your lineup there. Coop wants to know how high is too high to rank Chris Godwin. Where do you have Chris Godwin ranked this week in his matchup against the Lions?
Yeah, so the answer to Coop's question is however high he has him ranked, because if he's asking that question, then clearly he's got him a bit too high. For me this week, I moved up Chris Godwin a fair amount. Let me see exactly where I've got him. I've got him at wide receiver 16 overall, which I think is actually a little bit ahead of consensus out there. So I am also bullish. I loved seeing him go back into the slot. But like I said, Coop, if you're asking, you might actually be the standard bearer for how high someone can rank him out there.
I mean, listen, he obviously looked really good last week against the Commanders. 8 catches. And the score there, they moved them back into the slot is sort of, natural position. And they had the new offensive coordinator coming in, and everybody was calling the Cooper Kupp comparisons. Well, Cooper Kupp in week 1 had 21 targets following the Puka Nacua injury. Got this week matchup on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, all signs point to Kupp continue to be an absolute target monster. We know he set the NFL record a few seasons ago. He's been banged up a little bit since then. But if he is healthy, I mean, the man is almost uncoverable running across the field with the way he is and the way they always use motion with their routes. But I guess my question to you is, who are you trusting now as like the number 2 pass catcher? Because we saw Tyler Johnson obviously make a lot of plays. You have Demarcus Robinson. Colby Parkinson was involved there. Where are you going as like that next receiver in LA?
Yeah, I think the answer is in your question, right? I think we're going to see them sort of spread the ball around, not perfectly evenly, but really take more of a platoon approach. I do think that this really raises the floor for guys like Parkinson and Robinson. I think that we're going to see pretty solid target volume out of each of
Sure.
them. And then with a guy like Johnson, I think he's probably the more upside dart throw of the lot. But realistically, I mean, I think plan A is going to be a ton of Cooper Kupp, probably a bit more throwing out of the backfield to guys like Kyron Williams. Maybe this opens the door for Blake Corum to get a bit more involved.
I was going to say, that was my next question. What is with Blake Corum getting iced out? Ronnie Rivers actually getting snaps ahead of him here in that backfield.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, right? I don't know exactly what led to that point. It was obviously something that no one really saw coming.
Right.
Clearly, the lesson here is to not put too much weight behind any preseason or offseason reporting. Right? We are merely speculating until we see these guys take the field. I do think that we'll get to a point where we see Corum take the field, overtake Ronnie Rivers, and really be part of that larger platoon conversation behind Kyron Williams, who by my book will continue to be the lead back in that backfield.
Yep. Our guy Dan Malin's in the chat. He is our Showdown playbook extraordinaire. You can find his Showdown playbook for tonight's Thursday night football game over on FantasyAlarm.com right now. We got a 7-day free trial going on. So if you're tuning in and you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, FantasyAlarm.com/win. When you sign up, you get 7 days free. So you get access to all of our DFS premium content, including our Showdown playbook for tonight, our DFS content for Sunday, our betting content, and all of our premium content outside of football as well. It's a huge MMA card. They have their Sphere UFC pay-per-view on Saturday. We still do MLB DFS. We got a whole bunch of NASCAR coming up. So you can try us out for free for 7 days and become a member of the family there. Boss Bra saying Bengals are overrated. Certainly looked overrated in week one. They'll be they certainly have some questions to be answered in week two in a really tough spot on the road in Kansas City. So probably not going to pull out a win there. So Donnie wants to know, is Achane playing tonight? He is. The reports on Twitter are that he's going to be their lead running back tonight for as long as his ankle holds up. Is that coach speak? Is that reality? We'll see, right? If you're building some lineups tonight, sprinkle in some Achane. I guess the question is, all three running backs are active tonight. Wilson, Achane, and Wright. Wright was the inactive running back last week. Wilson was active. What do you think the pecking order of the touches would be here this evening?
Yeah, I think it would go in that order, right? I think Achane is going to be the quote unquote lead back, followed by Wilson and Wright. What I've made, the sense that I've made out of this Dolphins backfield since the point that they drafted Jalen Wright is they've made it abundantly clear that they want to use a multitude of backs, right? Yeah. That's how Devon Achane ended up there last year. That's how Jalen Wright ends up there this year. Right. So, it's going to continue to be a 3-man rotation. The fact that Jalen Wright was inactive last week probably tells you where he is in terms of his standing in the eyes of the coaching staff. So I would expect arguably the lowest volume out of him. But honestly, he's got a higher upside than Jeff Wilson Jr. in my mind, right? So, he's a player that with Achane active, I think we'll see his rostership fall just so slightly in showdown slates, and you might be able to get a bit of an edge by rostering him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's going to be some potential upside there. Right, if he gets on the field and he's a home run hitter, they talk about his speed. Like, you could easily take one play in showdown and that be the difference maker for you cashing or not cashing there. Start Wilson or Wright again. I'm going to go Wilson over Wright for me. Just feels like that's the order, but we don't know. We'll find. Like you said, Achane and Wright feel like they have too similar of a skill set there. So. Wright and Adonai Mitchell are available. Would you pick either of them up? And if yes, which one?
I guess in all these questions, the real answer is depending on who you have to drop, right? Yeah. Assuming you have a spot open or you have someone that is worthy of cutting, I would run, not walk, and go pick out Adonai Mitchell. This is a guy that left 150 yards and 2 walk-in touchdowns on the board last week if Anthony Richardson could only complete an intermediate pass, right? So, he's definitely a guy that is actually among the highest dropped in all of fantasy land. So you can go out there and get him for free. And, we see a point where Richardson, who was making his 5th start of his NFL career, like I know we're into year number 2, but he's still got the training wheels on him a little bit. I expect him to acclimate more and more as the season goes on to a point where when AD Mitchell gets open like that again, I don't think he's going to be missing him very often, and you're going to be happy you got him for free right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, Ashton Doolin and Alec Pierce had no problem hauling in their 50 and 60-yard passes, and AD Mitchell's wide open twice, and the ball's nowhere near him. Super upsetting because I had him stacked with Richardson in some of my DFS lineups this weekend. Obviously, Richardson worked out fine, but eating the 3 points from AD Mitchell there could have been a bigger day. Should I put Wilson? Should I put in? This is a DFS question for tonight. Would you play both running backs in Showdown? Achane and Wilson?
I probably would not. Wilson for is a bit more of a floor play. And in Showdown, you're really looking for, for that peak scoring output. And just from a game script or a narrative standpoint, I think the only way Wilson gets there is plays up Achane is not getting
we got a question here from Jedi Avenger. Wright, Dowdle, Chase, Brown, Javonte, and Bucky Irving. He says, who would you start out of it? If we're picking one, I guess, a Wright, Dowdle, Chase Brown, Javonte Williams, Bucky Irving.
This is a tough spot because you have a bunch of guys that are all kind of clumped in right near each other in rankings. I guess of this group, I would lean towards Rico Dowdle. He saw pretty close to a 50-50 split. Definitely flashed at times in that game. But honestly, I mean, this is almost so close that it's really just kind of a personal preference call more than anything else.
Yeah, I might lean Javonte just home versus the Steelers this week.
Sure.
I think it could be me a little bit of a better spot for him. Pick 3 of Achane, Waddle, Nico Collins, and Jordan Mason. I mean, good drafting here. I'm not sitting Waddle under any circumstance. Obviously you have to make the decision on Achane tonight. Because you could just play Nico Collins and Jordan Mason, but the CMC practicing, has me slightly concerned on Mason. It could end up being a timeshare if CMC ends up being active this week. Where would you go?
Yeah, with these, I tend to err on the side of the sure thing, right? Like we said off the top, I'm fully expecting another week of Jordan Mason, but we don't know. And if you pass up on Devon Achane tonight, and now we are looking at a world where CMC's playing, you're going to be in a world of hurt, right? So, for my money, I would probably go Waddle, Collins, and Mason, but I don't know that risk of catching a 0 or a replacement level player in that flex spot if CMC fires it up.
Sure. Kenneth Walker missed practice again. They have a road matchup against New England here this week. He wants to know, should he be starting Wright in his place tonight, or wait it out and just play Spears or Brown if Walker's out? I would wait it out. I'd be more comfortable, I think, playing Spears or Chase Brown than playing Wright tonight.
Yeah, I would as well, right? You and I are in lockstep that we believe Wright is probably going to be the third banana here. There's a non-zero chance that Walker makes the turnaround and plays, and if not, I think you can get comparable, if not better, production out of either Spears or Brown than you might out of Wright tonight.
Good. Would you sit Achane for Montgomery or Pollard tonight?
I probably would not. I think that Achane should have a fine, even if he's a bit.
I think we lost Eric's sound here briefly. Eric, I think we're losing your sound, at least on my end here. I'm gonna bring you out of the room and maybe bring you back in and see if we can get that back. Let's give it 1 second while we work through that. Let's see. You want to give us the 1-2s here? Check 1-2. So I think we're still. Let's see. I don't hear you. Maybe leave out completely and come back in, Eric, and we'll see if we can kind of reconnect you on the sound there. Let's see. What do you think about Josh Allen as the MVP? Yeah. Oh, you guys said this already, Chris. Yeah, I like that. I think Dan had checked in on this, but I like Josh Allen as the MVP here today as well. Going Cook, Wilson, Shakir, or go with one running back and one quarterback. Let's see. We got. What's up, Eric? We got you. We're good. I think we got you.
Lovely.
So we got Josh Allen as MVP from Chris Destin again. He's also double quarterbacking Cook, Wilson Jr., and Shakir, or go with one running back and one quarterback. So I don't mind playing both quarterbacks. I think what you're missing there is the top end wide receivers. Waddle and Tyreek Hill not in that lineup.
Yeah, I mean you're definitely you're painting a very clear picture that it is a down night for Waddle and for Hill with this build. And if that's the case, it's probably a down night for Tua, right? So I don't know if I follow the logic here. In terms of receiver targets, I love how this game sets up for Khalil Shakir, right? The soft spot of this Miami secondary is Kader Kohu, and that is where Shakir is going to see 80% of his routes run in his coverage.
Yeah.
So definitely like getting exposure to Khalil Shakir in tonight's matchup. But specifically about that build, if you're gonna fade the Dolphins receivers like that, you should probably fade Tua as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. Trade already. Tyreek Hill, Ramondre for Garrett Wilson, Jacobs, and Monty. His running backs are Aaron Jones, Mason, and Brooks. His receivers are Marvin Harrison, Drake London, Rashee Rice, and Brian Thomas. What side are you getting? Are you trading Tyreek Hill and Ramondre Stevenson here? Get Wilson, Jacobs, and Monty to go with Jones, Mason, and Brooks. I don't ever really want to give up Tyreek Hill, but getting Wilson, Jacobs, and Montgomery is pretty good for that duo. So
yeah, I think I would take this deal in so much as, or at least in the context of me not being able to get something better out in the market. If this is the best deal available to you in your league, then I think you can go for it, right? Specifically because
the running back depth is good.
Yeah, you need to bolster that running back depth, right? You've got guys in Mason who might have the job for another week or two, maybe. We've got Brooks who is going to be out for a few more weeks and is probably going to take some time to ramp up to the NFL level, right?
So and it's on the Panthers,
definitely, yeah, you're plugging a big hole in your roster with this approach, but just shop Hill around a bit and make sure you can't do better out in the marketplace of your league.
Yeah, and that's assuming that's the side you're getting. If you're getting Wilson, Jacobs, and Montgomery, I would do that deal. Just given the roster you got there. Toronto Dave is part of Bills Mafia. Love Toronto Dave in chat. Happy to have you with us there. His team: Jaden Daniels, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Kyron, Connor, Monty, Ferguson, and JC. I don't know what JC is there. Must be can't off the top of my head. Thoughts on making a better team? Ferguson's hurt. He's gonna miss a couple weeks with the knee, so you probably need a new tight end. But I like the rest of that group. You need a wide receiver, right? Higgins isn't gonna play, so. But Jaden Daniels, Garrett Wilson, Waddle, Connor, Montgomery is like a really good core. So fine.
Is JC might be James Conner. So I'm assuming that means he's got Benson and probably Corum.
Oh, K and JC. So Kyron and JC are cuffed.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's got Corum and he's got
Benson hanging out there. Yeah.
You need a tight end and you need a wide receiver too, or wide receiver 3, I guess. So.
Yeah, and a lot of commissioner platforms still have their default roster to only start 2 wide receivers, so might not be too desperately in need of another wideout, but ultimately you want to build up that depth there, and obviously you have to answer the injury question.
Agreed. What do you think of playing mini stack of Allen and Coleman? Keon Coleman, slow start, obviously, for a rookie. He didn't have the greatest camp and preseason either, but they are hopeful for big things out of him. I would assume he's probably going to be the lower of the stacks here tonight. Obviously, the way Shakir looked last week, you'll see more, I think, Allen with Kincaid and Allen Shakir stacks, and you'll see Allen Coleman stacks tonight. So if you want to be different, Aaron, you can do Allen and Coleman.
Yeah, I like this call for just that reason, right? Coleman obviously didn't set the world on fire in his debut. He should be able to avoid Jalen Ramsey for the better part of his night, so that will work in his favor. And if nothing else, I don't think he's going to be all that popular. So you get a guy that has that big play touchdown scoring upside that is going to be a bit overlooked, and that's usually a good formula in Showdown.
Kid Catastrophe is thinking JC might have been Jamar. I mean, that would be a lot better if he had Jamar on that lineup. But I'm thinking since he says cuffed, we're talking Benson there. Then another showdown lineup from Chris because he's stacking out that 100K over on FanDuel tonight. This one looking a bit more balanced. Allen, Achane, Waddle, Coleman, and Kincaid. So you have the two of the three primary ball guys on Miami, and then you're hoping for Coleman to take that step forward and Kincaid to bounce back from a tough night. Again, rocking Allen as your captain, I'm 100% okay with that. On DraftKings, just for salary savings, I got Jalen Waddle in my captain spot, but I still have majority of those same players that you're referring to in your lineup there. So, I don't have any issues. I'm rocking Waddle, Hill, Allen, Shakir, Coleman, and Jeff Wilson over on DraftKings with Waddle as my captain. So, getting some exposure there. Maybe I'll get burned by Tua if he ends up having like 2 touchdowns, but it's kind of where I'm at with things here tonight in my one lineup. Katie wants to know PPR, Jeff Wilson Jr., Jamal Williams, or Justice Hill for this weekend.
Ooh, I think I'd actually err on the side of Jeff Wilson Jr. of this lot. I think that he's probably got the highest floor. Justice Hill is an intriguing stash for me because I think that we're going to see him involved a lot as a pass catcher, at least until Mitchell comes back months down the road. But this isn't the game script where I would expect Baltimore to be throwing a ton, right?
Yeah.
So would lean Jeff Wilson Jr. here in so much as I think he'll probably get, between like 22 and 26% of the snaps in this backfield, and that should be enough.
Yeah, Jamal Williams only got his run in that game late because they were up so big last week. He got a lot of junk yardage once they took Kamara out of that game. Justice Hill did have, I think it was like 5 or 6 catches last week, but the game script, like you said, they were constantly trailing or even with Kansas City there. One of my favorite plays this week in DFS is Derrick Henry. I know last week they said, we didn't bring Derrick Henry in to carry the ball 30 times. Well, when Lamar Jackson's missing practice due to general soreness and you got a matchup against the Raiders here, I think this is a spot where they take the lead as a big home favorite, and you get 25 carries from Derrick Henry just kind of running out the clock in this one. So that's kind of where I'm at with things here. Let's get to our thoughts on this game, though, because we haven't really broken down this Bills Dolphins matchup quite yet. Obviously, we've talked about the news of Devin Achane being active for tonight. Raheem Mostert obviously inactive. That was made official a couple of days ago. Miami's a 2.5 home favorite here tonight. Game total in this one for a Thursday night football game, pretty solid. Usually these games tend to go towards the under, but 48.5 is the total there. So what sides of the lines are you riding tonight?
Yeah, so I will happily take the points with the Buffalo Bills tonight. These are both teams that are entering 1-0, but both teams that had to make, I think it was 12 or 14 point comebacks in week number 1 in order to hang that W on the board. So not exactly coming in mid-season form. And honestly, there are 2 things to factor in here. One, Tua historically has not played well against the Buffalo Bills. He's 1-6. He's got a little bit more than 200 passing yards per game, 6 TDs, 7 interceptions. So definitely has a negative history against this team. And like I've talked about over the course of the entirety of the offseason, Miami let all of their interior line strength go over the course of the offseason, right? We've seen Tua's passer rating, we've seen his completion percentage drop precipitously when he's under pressure. Managed to do okay in week number 1, right? It wasn't exactly a dumpster fire.
Right.
So, potentially the guys they've brought in are able to tread water a little bit, but I think the Buffalo is going to be able to get a little bit more pressure on Tua. Also in the run game, I mean, this is a unit that is among the worst in the NFL in terms of yards before contact. They're letting pressure and tacklers get to their running backs very quickly. That is Miami. So I think the Bills should be able to take full advantage of an advantage in the trenches, and should be able to come away with not only the outright win, but certainly cover getting the points too.
Yeah, I think I saw something like Josh Allen too was like 6-0 on Thursdays. Not that matters, because Aaron Rodgers had won like 10 straight Monday Night Football games, and we saw how that turned out on Monday as well. But some people care about those things. I'm kind of with you as well. I think that the ability of Josh Allen to sort of take over games with his legs, it just extends drives. It can be a killer. As long as he's not turning the football over, that offense just moves, right? So it doesn't really matter who they got. And then once they got into a rhythm in the second half of last week, they were able to really just put some points on the board against Arizona. So I like that call. A lot more questions starting to pop in here. Another trade. People are making moves already. Trade JD5. Jaden Daniels already on the block for Drake, Charbonnet, and Stafford. He's got Fields. He's got Kenneth Walker. I'm assuming it's K9. Zamir, Warren, Puka, Keon, G. Willie, or trade G. Willie for Amari and Ford. I'm not up to tune on a lot of nicknames for players here. So if I missed anybody, trade JD5 for Drake, Charbonnet, and Stafford. So I'm assuming that's Drake London, right? Kenny Drake's not in the league anymore.
Jaden Daniels for Drake London, Zach Charbonnet, and Stafford.
That's
that would allow him to handcuff K9, Kenneth Walker. Stafford is a fine combination with Fields, so I think you're doing okay there. Yeah, honestly, I mean, if that's Drake London, I feel like you gotta hit that button pretty quickly.
Yeah, because he lost Puka Nacua already. He's got Keon Coleman. It's a Garrett Wilson, I would imagine, is G. Willie here.
Guess, yeah.
I'm fine with that, I guess. I mean, obviously you're trading. I mean, Jaden Daniels had a really good week on the ground last week. I think the majority of his fantasy points this year is going to be that way. He's going to probably run for 800 yards this season, right? He had the 80 and 2 scores, only threw for around 200 last week, and that's what I would sort of expect out of him. I think he'll have a better passing week this week just because it's the Giants. But I get the worry to handcuff all those moves just to handcuff Kenneth Walker, though, right? Like, is there not a smaller trade to be made just to get Charbonnet, I guess would be my question. But if that's the deal you got to make there, I'm good doing that one if you want. Rod, should I start Burrow or go Geno Smith here? I don't really love Geno going into New England with the way that defense looked last week, but Burrow on the road against Kansas City is not really in a much better spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I would still lean towards Burrow here, right? Geno Smith is getting a difficult matchup against New England on the road. It seems like there's still a bit of an acclimation period happening with this new Grub offense for him as well.
Yeah.
Whereas Joe Burrow, I mean, even though we talked earlier about his slow starts to the season, he has shined brightest in these big moments against Kansas City. I think that the scoring is going to necessitate that they are trying to at least keep pace. And if nothing else, we'll see about T. Higgins' availability. But I do expect Jamar Chase to be in more typical form this week. So I'd go Burrow of these two.
In a perfect world, what would be the perfect draft tonight? I don't know. I mean, Josh Allen going off for a couple of rushing touchdowns as your captain. Probably Shakir, as you mentioned. If you can get Tyreek Hill and Waddle, I like both of those, but kind of difficult to build a perfect world showdown lineup, right? You just jam in all the big names and make it fit.
So, yeah, I mean that's really it, right? Like, I think speculating in one of the lower owned Bills receivers is probably a good way to go. Whether it's Coleman, whether it's Kincaid, right? Even though he was out there for a huge percentage of snaps, Mac Hollins doesn't seem to be getting steamed up too
Yeah.
much, and he's the one that's out there on wide receiver 2 set, so he could be a unique way to get into this Bills side, right? Like, to your point, having Josh Allen up top is pretty clear to pretty close to a lock button, I should say. So finding the leverage off of who you stack him with is really the way to go.
Yeah, 60% offensive snaps for Mac Hollins last week. I mean, the guy on DraftKings, I think he's like even $1,000. I'm trying to pulling this up right now. Hollins on DraftKings, $2,400. So you had your choice of Jeff Wilson Jr. or Mac Hollins tonight at $2,400. Which would you play?
I would probably go Mac Hollins. Honestly, I think Wilson's a bit more of a floor play, right? And you're getting the salary relief with both of them.
Yeah, I don't mind that play at all there. Let's see. I have Henry, Hall, Barkley, and Mason. If CMC is out, when I sit Henry. Henry, again, is one of my favorite plays this week. You got to playing 3 of Henry, Hall, Barkley, and Mason. Which one would you sit?
I know that he's coming off of a phenomenal performance, right? But at this point, he's the one that has the smallest sample size in terms of production like that at the NFL level.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mason, I think, is the one we'd go with there. So, Pittman or Keon Coleman this week?
The target leader for the Indianapolis Colts, I think Anthony Richardson threw the ball like 19.
I lost you a little bit there, Eric. I think your mic cut out again a little bit. Little static connection. I don't know if it's a connection issue or if it's a mic connection issue there, but I heard you say Pittman and the target leader there for the Colts. So we got that for you. Captain on FanDuel, Coleman stacks. That's not where I'm going tonight. I think you got to get one of the top plays there. Coleman, I mean, listen.
Yeah.
Alan Lazard won the Millie for somebody on Monday. So if Coleman goes out and does an Alan Lazard performance at low ownership, you'll probably have yourself a good opportunity there to take it down. But you got to be knowing that not many, if any, are really going to be rostering Keon Coleman as their MVP here tonight. Right, Eric?
Yeah. So, I mean, if he does the Alan Lazard thing, then sure, you're vaulting up the payout ladder, and you're probably not splitting that money with very many people. So I think that's the case for it. But realistically speaking, right, like Josh Allen, for his involvement as a passer, his involvement as the lead red zone running back, essentially, I mean, he is the clear choice, and then you go out and find other ways to differentiate your lineup.
We got Twitch Gang in here. Want to know if J-Mo is legit this year. I have been a Jameson Williams truther since he was drafted. I even stashed him, figuring he'd come back from the ACL, and second half of the year he'd be good to go. And then obviously he had his own issues getting injured. And then last year he was off to a slow start. But I mean, this guy is very talented. He's a big playmaker, and loving that Dan Campbell said not only was he recommitted to staying healthy this year, that they were also going to be working on his route tree. So he wasn't just a guy that runs straight. And we saw that right away last week. He was able to run across the field. And he is a tough man to cover when he's running horizontally across the field with his speed and the fact that he's able to catch the ball while running. He made that big play for a touchdown. I like him, but would you trade him for a more established receiver in Amari Cooper? The quarterback situation, obviously, in Cleveland has me very worried.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I appreciate and love the energy of wanting to go out and sell high on Jameson Williams. I'm closer to your side of the spectrum, John. Right? Like I think that this is more along the lines of what we can expect out of JMO. Granted, pretty close to his ceiling, but I think there's still a lot to be excited about for him going forward. But if you want to take advantage of the spike week and try to flip him, go out there and do it. Don't do it for Amari Cooper or for anyone who is dependent on Deshaun Watson, because he looks lost out there. It looks like his shoulder is not fully recovered. At least he didn't have a whole lot of zip on his ball. There is a lot to be concerned about the passing offense in Cleveland specifically.
They got Jameis Winston as their backup this year, probably wishing they held on to Joe Flacco at this point. Another trade question here. Week 1 in the books, and we got trades galore with some big names. Half PPR, Pittman, Coleman, Ford for Evans, Ladd, and Singletary. He's trying to upgrade at wide receiver, and the Evans owner needs a running back. I mean, you're getting Evans, Ladd, and Singletary. I'm fine doing that deal. I mean, I think Evans is better than Pittman, Ladd, and Coleman. Ladd certainly looked good last week. And Ford, if Chubb comes back, I mean, what is Ford's role going to be in that offense? So if the Evans owner is willing to move, I think that you could make that trade.
Yeah, I think this one's kind of a toss-up, right? I don't think that you're really moving the needle in any sort of significant way by making this deal, right? Really, what you're asking us is our point of view on Nick Chubb and his return. I tend to think that we might not see him at all this year. If we do, it's going to be in a pretty limited capacity. So I'm a bit more bullish on Ford, and I don't necessarily want to ship that player out the door. For me, I think the comp is a little bit closer to Ladd and Pittman. We're talking about volume guys that have a nice, juicy floor. Pittman has arguably a bit more upside just given the nature of his offense. So really we're making a decision between Evans and Coleman. Evans is clearly the much more established option. I think he's got a much higher ceiling, a much cleaner projection. So forced into this spot, I would definitely take the Evans side, but this kind of just feels like you're trading for trading's sake, really.
Yeah, it feels like an upgrade to one guy, but it's probably more of a push. We do have the trade analyzer over on Fantasy Alarm. So if you go to fantasyalarm.com and check out our NFL tools, we have the trade analyzer. You can input all 3 players on each side, and it'll tell you which we figure will project out to have the most fantasy points rest of season. So go check out the trade analyzer over on Fantasy Alarm. Kid Katachri saying, FanDuel, you got to MVP Josh Allen. I kind of feel like that's the play here this week as well. Geno Smith being bad under pressure and Keon White coming up straight up the middle. Listen, the Patriots traded Matt Judon away because they were comfortable with Keon White being that next great pass rusher, right? They had Trey Flowers. Flowers left. They brought in Judon. Judon's gone. Keon White's now that guy. And they moved them all around. It wasn't just the edge. They moved them left, right. They moved them up the middle, and he got 2.5 sacks in week 1, did Keon White there. So Derek saying, what's up? Camden's got a question. Another trade just offered Jaden Daniels for Dobbins and Roma Dunze for Derrick Henry and Caleb Williams. I mean, Roma Dunze is hurt, didn't practice today, going to get an MRI. Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. I mean, Jaden Daniels going ahead of Williams in redrafts because of that rushing upside, and Williams obviously did not look good in week 1. Keenan Allen also didn't practice, so that foot issue they told us not to worry about during the preseason is now a reason to worry. I mean, listen, I love Derrick Henry, but I don't know if I'm doing that deal. What do you think?
Yeah, this feels like a lot to essentially get Derrick Henry back, right?
Yeah.
The questions I would have would be around who else is on this roster, right? Like if you're making this trade and acquiring Caleb Williams, do you have to start him every week, or do you have someone on your roster that you would start over him? I mean, I think you're very much so selling at the floor for Roma Dunze. Don't like doing that categorically. J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he looked great in this first week, right? The open question is whether or not he can stay healthy for the course of the season. So I don't mind the idea of striking while the iron's hot there, but it's just it feels like you're shipping out a lot of pieces that have standalone value in the trade market of your league to get back one player in Derrick Henry, which granted we're both bullish on. I think if you were to kind of break these into smaller deals, you would probably walk away with a bit more.
Yeah, and just for the future trade questions, I see a couple more in chat. Give us as much of the picture as you can, so we can kind of give the biggest idea for everybody here. Derek says, with Achane starting, would you hold Jeff Wilson Jr. or drop him to add Tyler Johnson or Tank Bigsby? He's also got Jalen Wright stash, so he's holding both backup running backs in Miami. I mean, listen, I'll say this. Do you have to make a decision right now? I mean, you can wait and see how it plays out. Achane could get hurt tonight, right? We were assuming the ankle's good to go, but if he goes down and Mostert is hurt, I wouldn't want to dump either player until we figure out how they come out of this evening. So, I don't think Tyler Johnson's going to be a league winner, and Tank Bigsby's clearly behind Travis Etienne. So, Derek, just wait a day. Wait till tonight. You'll get your answer on which is the player in that pecking order, because you could drop Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jalen Wright might not see the field, and then you're like, what did I do? So, hold for a day. I don't think those other two guys are going to be huge difference makers. Trade question. He's got Mahomes at quarterback, A.J. Brown, Pittman, Flowers, Reed, Coleman, and Hollywood. Saquon Jacobs for Najee. Did you ask us a trade question earlier, and he's just giving us his team now?
Perhaps.
I don't see it. If you did, retype it in, and we'll help you there, RGQ. But I don't see what your trade question was there. AA wants to know our thoughts on Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw why Justin Herbert was slipping down draft boards over the course of the summer, right? Like, he still, from a talent and skill set standpoint, is one of the premier quarterbacks in this league, but he refuses to push the ball down the field as it was, and now he's in an offense that is much more run centric, right? So, ultimately, I think that he's someone that is a solid backup, probably a little bit closer to waiver wire fodder more than anything else.
Yep, I agree with you. They told you what they were going to do. They brought in Greg Roman. They brought in 2 running backs. They got rid of all of their skill offensive players, and they're like, we're just going to run the ball and we'll throw over the middle to Ladd McConkey, right? There's just not going to be that much. They turned Justin Herbert into a game manager to fit a style. They should probably trade Justin Herbert, honestly, and get some.
Well, that's
value.
kind of the thing, right? Like, Justin Herbert. I mean, he's got a cannon, but through the early days of his NFL career, he was real quick to go intermediate and get the first down, right? So basically, they're like, if you're inclined to do that, then we'll build that fortress around you. And so far this week, it's working.
First time here, I need to start 2 of the 3 in a 10 PPR. Connor, Walker, and Waddle. Well, you're definitely starting Waddle tonight, because we don't know if Walker's going to play. So you don't want to sit Waddle and then have Walker sit out on you. So definitely go Waddle. And then, I think I go Connor over Walker anyways, regardless there. What do you think?
I think I would as well. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised at all if your decision is made for you by way of availability. But if it is not, then I've got Connor 4 spots ahead of Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Chris wants me to give him a lineup for the showdown. I'll give you that in a second here. Jeff Wilson or Rico Dowdle and a half PPR.
I would err on the side of Dowdle again. I think these two might have been in that jumble of spare running back parts earlier. I was actually intrigued with the way that he ran the ball. Looks like he's pretty close to a 50-50 split. I don't think we'll see Jeff Wilson get up to 50-50 tonight. So would go with the guy that should have a bit more opportunity.
I like that. Drop Khalil Shakir for Deontay Johnson, or drop or is it a 4 or an or, Liam? Would you drop Khalil Shakir or Deontay Johnson, or would you drop Khalil Shakir for Deontay Johnson? What are your thoughts there?
I wouldn't drop either of these players for either of the other ones. I would believe in my heart of hearts that you have a better drop somewhere on your roster. These, whichever side of the syntax we fall on how this question is set up. I don't like putting players of this caliber out onto the wire unnecessarily.
I agree with you. Let's see. I want to get out of the Indy Cleveland offense is the reason I'm going to go 1-for-1 trade. It's hard for me to follow that one, man. Just give us the straight up trade, and I'll be able to help you out there. Start sit flex Coleman versus Miami, Ford versus Jacksonville, Najee versus Denver. If I have Coleman, I can move him to wide receiver 3 and bring Pittman into the flex. I don't think I'm starting Coleman tonight of that group anyways. I think I would rather play Pittman, Ford, and Najee over Coleman.
I would as well, right? I talked about it earlier. Really, the only soft spot in this secondary is Kader Kohu. Coleman played no snaps out of the slot, so he's going to see none of that favorable matchup. In the DFS context, I think Coleman makes some sense because he's going to be overlooked relative to the other pass catchers in Buffalo. But if we're talking about a season-long or managed league, he's definitely the one to sit of this lot.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's see. I have Anthony Richardson is a star. Oh, okay. So Camden's got Richardson. This is why it's hard for us to answer trade questions because we're getting tea leaf pieces as we work our way down the chat. So I'm like, I forget what you even asked in the first place. Shakir, Kirk, Judy, or Bigsby in a PPR flex?
This one is a bit trickier. I guess I would err on the side of Khalil Shakir just because I am locked into these wide receiver cornerback matchups, and he's got the most favorable. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of volume going his way.
Yeah.
Don't want to be involved in the Browns offense like we talked about. Bigsby, the backup. Kirk didn't look great. Arguably, Kirk probably has a bit of a safer floor, but
yeah.
I mean, by degrees. Whenever it's that close, I'll err.
I was definitely disappointed by the Jags' offensive showing again. Like I feel like there's talent there, and I mean Brian Thomas Jr. was good, but that was that was about it on that offense. Wright, Chuba, or Spears in PPR?
I would go certainly not Wright. Of these two, I would lean towards Chuba.
Yeah.
Spears is a little bit hard to pin down in terms of their usage. To where I think we've got a cleaner line of sight on what Hubbard's going to do this week.
Agreed. If Pittman and Coleman play good, package them for JJ, Ayuk, or Chase. I mean, if the owner will take it, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
The Giants should trade for Herbert. I would agree with that move. That would be a good trade for the Giants. They desperately need quarterback. It's an or, so that would be drop Shakir or Deontay Johnson. For Likely or Mason, I'm guessing for Liam here.
I think what Liam's saying is that he needs a drop either way, and it's those two or Likely or Mason.
Okay. I would drop Deontay Johnson maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, of that lot, I mean, honestly, I would just start working the phones. Like if you're in a position where someone's coming off of IR and you have to let someone go, like taking 75 or 80 cents on the dollar on any of these guys is going to be better than just dropping them onto the wire for free.
Agreed. Can always find a way to improve your team there. Achane or Ford 1 point PPR for Russ?
I'd actually go Achane here. Ford saw good volume, but it was really that garbage time touchdown that bailed him out. I do think that we see Achane get a little bit more work tonight, and he's obviously one of the more efficient runners in the league.
Yep. Would you play Coleman or Shakir over Christian Kirk this week in PPR?
Well, we touched on this earlier. I'll still go with Shakir. Coleman is the clear cross off of the three. The floor between Shakir and Kirk is neck and neck, and Shakir's upside is a little bit higher.
Yep, agreed with you guys 100%. Guys, just one more time. Here's QR code. Sorry, Eric, covering your face. QR code here on the screen, fantasystime.com/win. New users get a 7-day free trial when they sign up. So scan that QR code there on the screen, fantasystime.com/win. When you sign up and you enter promo code Let's Go, you also get that first month after the 7-day free trial for less than $20. So make sure you check that out, fantasystime.com/win. That's what we got here tonight for you guys. Go enjoy Thursday Night Football. We'll be back live Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Myself and Andrew Cooper right here on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Free way to support the work we do here. Good luck with week 2. We'll see you then.